All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. We're in a little bit of a different location here today, up in the press box. And there's a little bit of rain, a little bit of lightning, which, heck, extended the game a little bit from the original start time. So we're up here in a little bit of a different location, but still breaking down Tennessee's win over Austin Peay on Saturday night right here in Neyland Stadium. Tennessee gets the victory by a score of 30-13, but Ryan admittingly, this is Ryan Shumpert, by the way, I'm Rick Butler. Ryan admittingly, well, we all three went into this game thinking it was going to be a giant points affair for Tennessee, that the second half was going to involve a lot of backups and rotation. None of that really came to fruition. We'll talk about the rotation a little bit later on, but Tennessee found trouble thanks to this Austin Peay really offense at the beginning of the game, but they certainly made this a testing and a trying game for Tennessee. What did you see? Just kind of what are your overall broad thoughts?
No, you're right, and we've kind of discussed it or a little bit in some text. Where does this game rank in like the unconvincing wins from Tennessee of recent years? And one that we did bring up is, I feel it's a good oversight. To me, it felt a lot like the Bowling Green game. Josh Heupel's first game, Milton's first game, Tennessee's starting quarterback 2 years ago, where Tennessee really kind of had to abandon the pass in that game and just run the football. And it wasn't quite that, but Tennessee did effectively abandon any sort of downfield. And I say downfield, I mean anything more than 5 yards down the line of scrimmage passing. A lot of short stuff, a lot to lean on in the run game, and just kind of had to rely on that because not a good day for Tennessee's offense. Not a good day for Tennessee's receivers. Not a good day for Joe Milton.
Even going back to last week, I think one of the things that Josh Heupel talked about was that the receivers weren't necessarily settled in early into the game. You really saw that again for a second straight week. Tennessee's offense really just wasn't settled in at all. And you're right. There was a lot of times where Austin Peay was kind of running they were pulling a lot of people back into pass protection. They were really only rushing three at certain times. So they were taking away the super deep ball, but Tennessee's receivers and the quarterback just were never really in sync throughout a lot of that game, especially when it comes to, like you said, the downfield passing. How big of a concern do you think that is maybe coming out of this game?
I think it's a pretty sizable concern. I don't know how it's not when you can't have success throwing the football against Austin Peay, and certainly not that it was bad last week against Virginia, but it wasn't overly convincing in that game either. So I think it's a real concern. Josh Heupel was kind of asked about that. In the short passing, is that a product of what Austin Peay was doing, how Joe was playing, and he kind of said a combination of both. And then later said, the downfield shots, the deep shots, maybe weren't there, but the word for verbatim what he said, those throws over the middle were wide open, and Tennessee couldn't capitalize. And that's not all on Joe Milton. Plenty of drops. I felt like, especially early in the game, a lot of throws where Joe Milton was just a little off target, a little behind, balls that should have been caught. Balls that Milton throwing it behind really took away the ability for yards after catch on the plays, but balls that should have been caught. So Tennessee's receivers did him no favors, but at the same time, when in the second quarter, like we said, Tennessee, I think the most glaring stat from Tennessee's passing attack, in the first half, they didn't complete a pass not even down the field, past the line of scrimmage. They threw a bunch of screen passes, they threw some RPOs behind the line of scrimmage. You don't go to an offense like that if your quarterback's playing well, even if the receivers are letting him down. So receivers bad, Milton not very good either. And as Josh Heupel kind of reiterated a lot of times in his post-game press conference, a lot of work on, a lot of getting better to do before they head to Florida next week.
One of the things that Jabari Small said in his post-game, and he was answering a little bit of a different question, but he did bring up how, hey, this is a different team, right? And this is a team that is still working to figure out what they're going to do. Now, last week they talked about being in Nissan Stadium and having that be a little bit of a surprise. This week they talked about being back in Neyland Stadium and that maybe affecting things a little bit. They're going to have to kind of get over that quickly. At the end of the day, you got to go to your field. You got to play football on Saturdays if you want to win this game. Obviously, next week is going to be a huge task against Florida, but we will not jump there yet. Anyways, Jabari Small talks about how this is a different team. It's one that's really looking for their offensive identity. It's not going to be last year's just very sharp, very efficient passing that you saw from Hendon Hooker. I don't exactly know what it's going to be, but Tennessee needs to figure out their identity on offense, and that identity has to start working a little bit earlier into these games so they don't put themselves into a hole later on.
I think they want the identity to be a run-first team that can take some shots down the field and throw the ball effectively in the intermediate when opponents are trying to take away the deep shots. And certainly the run game I don't think was perfect tonight. Solid, but it all goes back to the passing game there. I will say, when you talk about identity, and Jack Foster and I were kind of talking about this in the fourth quarter, where it's like last year, Tennessee beat Kentucky, 44-6?
44, yeah, exactly that.
Much more convincing than they did tonight. And there's just so many little things with the offense. The Now, Josh Heupel didn't say this. Hinted he thought some were bad calls, but some of the procedural stuff on the screen games with offensive pass interferences, Tennessee got stuffed on multiple third down, third and short runs. Tennessee was so good running the ball in short yardage situations a year ago. So there's a lot to clean up on offense, even past the quarterback play, past the passing game, past the receivers. But I think it's hard not to think it all starts with that group right now.
You know, we will talk more about the offensive extendedly a little bit there on the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast, which we're going to record with Jack here in just a couple of minutes after this. But I want to go ahead and flip to the other side of the ball, flip to the defense. What did you think of how the defense performed tonight? Again, led up a total of 13 points, 7 in the fourth quarter, 3 in each of the first and second quarters. What did you think of how the defense performed?
Like they should have, like you want us to talk about it after the game where we say they were really good. It was just Austin Peay. That's how the defense performed. And certainly the busted coverage gave them a touchdown late, or really it wasn't as much as the busted coverage as Danico Slaughter just slipping and falling, leading to a wide open guy. First drive of the game, some small mistakes. They got beat on the read option pretty bad with the quarterback keeping it. But overall, really good. Defensive line just overwhelmed Austin Peay with their size, athleticism. And, I think you got to give the little bit of success Austin Peay did have offensively in the first half. I think you got to give a ton of credit to Austin Peay's coaches. I thought they had really good game plan, really good scheme to try to work around the deficiencies they had. But I guess when you talk about defense, through 2 weeks, last week we saw that defensive line and the pass rush look really good. They did the same thing today against Austin Peay.
Yeah, Austin Peay was running some funky formations. Some of the stuff that Tennessee was doing, a lot of motion, a lot of stacked receivers, especially split out way on the outside. So I did think that, Tennessee needed a minute to kind of get their footing and get themselves under them. And then, like you said, I thought they really finished it off with a solid performance on the day. There's a couple of players that, again, we'll speak more in depth on the RTI Press Pass podcast, like a Jeremiah Thielander. He got some good runs in the second half. Josh Heupel talked a lot about him in his press conference. So we'll talk about some of those players, but I certainly agree with you. This is, from the defensive side of the ball, this felt like what this game was probably going to be. Yeah,
and you talk about the intro of Tennessee not getting as many guys in the game. They didn't at all offensively, and defensively probably not to the degree we expected. But they did still in the second half, third, fourth quarter. They subbed a lot of guys and got a lot of different guys in the game. So I guess my last thought I have on Tennessee's defense, Aaron Beasley, fantastic again tonight. I think 9 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks. Yeah. He's looked like a guy that obviously played well last year. His game's taken another step forward. I said before the season, if anyone on Tennessee's defense is going to end up on the All-SEC teams, I think Beasley is the most likely guy. I feel all the more confident about that through 2 games.
Aaron Beasley, 8 solo tackles, 1 assisted, 9 total, 2 sacks for 19 yards, and then 5 tackles for loss for 24 yards. It's not a bad stat line at all right there for your starting linebacker, especially with Keenan Peay out. Yeah. Wesley Walker had 6 tackles. Then Jeremiah Thielander, we just talked about, had 6 as well, so they both finished second. We will break this down much more, though, on the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast, which you can go and find on Apple Podcasts, you can go and find on Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. That's where we will be coming up by the end of the night tonight. But Ryan, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here today. Again, we'll get to some of our other work, which you can go and find at www.rockytopinsider.com. We are also on social media. We are at Rocky Top Insider on all different social media platforms. That is Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can go and find all of our content there. We got a lot coming up today. Even though it's the Austin Peay game, so it's a little bit more dramatic of a game than I think some certainly expected. So we will have plenty of post-game coverage on the website later today.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rocky Top Insider post-game show. This is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. We will be coming back to you very, very soon. And hey, 1 week from tonight, we'll be coming to you live from Gainesville, Florida for a massive conference opening game, Tennessee versus Florida in the Swamp. We are excited for that. We know you guys are too. We will have more coverage for you down the road. Thank you for listening to the Rocky Top Insider post-game show.